If your mind has not been quiet for hours, if you keep replaying the same conversation, the same mistake, the same fear, this is not just overthinking. Something more specific is happening, and once you understand it, the loop becomes easier to interrupt. A lot of people think the problem is that they think too much. But the real problem is usually that the thinking has stopped being useful. It is no longer solving anything. It is just circling. That is a huge difference, because useful thinking moves you toward a decision. A loop only drains energy. So if your brain feels loud, crowded, and repetitive, you are probably not dealing with a character flaw. You are dealing with a mental pattern that has become overactive. In psychology, this is often described as rumination. That means repetitive, sticky thinking that keeps returning to the same emotional pain, uncertainty, or threat. The brain does this for a reason. It is trying to prevent future harm. It is trying to predict, control, and solve. But when the problem has no clean answer, the system keeps running anyway. So the mind says, think harder, review it again. Maybe you missed something. Maybe there is still a better outcome. And that feels productive, but it is not. It is often just the brain trying to get certainty from a situation that does not offer certainty. That is why people can spend hours mentally replaying one text message, one mistake, one awkward interaction, or one future possibility. The issue is not intelligence. The issue is fixation. The loop gets stronger for one simple reason. It feels urgent. When something feels unresolved, the brain treats it like a live problem, and the more important it feels, the harder it is to let it go. But here is the trap. The more you chase complete certainty, the less certain you feel. The more you try to force an answer, the more exhausted you become. Then, exhaustion makes the thought loop stronger. Now you are not only stuck in the thought itself, you are also stuck in the pressure to stop thinking, and that pressure creates a second layer of suffering. So the cycle becomes thought anxiety, more anxiety, self-criticism, even more thought. That is why telling yourself, just stop, usually fails. You cannot simply command the mind to become silent. The biggest mistake is treating every thought like a fact. Just because a thought appears strongly does not mean it is true. Just because it repeats does not mean it is important. And just because it feels urgent does not mean it needs an immediate answer. A lot of mental suffering comes from confusing the presence of a thought with the authority of a thought. That is the opening you need to notice. A thought is not a verdict. A thought is an event in the mind. That distinction matters. So today the goal is not to eliminate thought. That is too ambitious, and honestly, that is not the right target. The goal is to stop feeding the loop. 1. Label the process, not the content. Instead of asking, is this thought true, ask, is this rumination? That question creates distance. Example, this is not problem solving, this is looping. That small shift reduces fusion, which is the tendency to become emotionally swallowed by a thought. 2. Move from abstract to concrete. Rumination loves vague territory, so bring the mind back to something visible and physical. Not, what does my future mean, but what is the next action in front of me? Not, what if I ruined everything, but what is the one thing I need to do in the next 10 minutes? Concrete questions weaken spirals. 3. Use a time boundary. Do not tell yourself you will never think about it again. That usually backfires. Instead, give the mind a container. For example, I will think about this for 10 minutes, then stop. Even better, write the thought down once, then close the note. This tells the brain the issue is stored, not ignored. 4. Change state before you chase insight. If the body is tense, the mind stays loud. If you are exhausted, the loop becomes harder to break. So before trying to figure it out, do something physical. Stand up, wash your face, step outside, stretch, drink water, change rooms. This is not a magic cure. It is state management. A different body state often creates a different mental state. 5. Reduce decision load. When the brain is overloaded, too many choices make the loop worse. So simplify. Pick one task, one room, one message, one next step. The mind often calms down when the environment becomes easier to read. If the loop is mild, these steps may be enough to loosen it. If the loop keeps returning, the issue may be deeper than one bad day. That does not mean something is wrong with you. It means the pattern has learned to repeat, and learned patterns can be changed, but not by fighting them in the exact same way every time. So the summary is simple. You are not weak because your mind is busy. You are not broken because you cannot instantly shut it off. You may simply be caught in a loop that mistakes repetition for problem solving. The answer is not more pressure. The answer is less fusion, more concreteness, less noise, and one small next action. That is how the loop starts to break. Let's go one level deeper and make this very plain. A repetitive thought loop usually survives because it offers the illusion of control. The mind says, if I keep thinking, I will prevent regret. Or, if I keep analyzing, I will find the perfect answer. Or, if I replay this enough, I will finally feel safe. But safety does not come from infinite analysis. It comes from enough clarity to act, and enough tolerance to move forward without perfect certainty. That is why many evidence-based approaches focus less on winning against thoughts and more on changing your relationship to them. In cognitive behavioral therapy, thoughts are examined for distortion, usefulness, and accuracy. In acceptance-based approaches, thoughts are allowed to exist without being obeyed. Both directions are trying to do the same practical thing: weaken the automatic power of the loop. The important point is this: a thought can be loud and still be unhelpful. A thought can be emotional and still be misleading. A thought can even be partly true and still not deserve your full attention right now. That last part matters a lot, because the brain does not only generate false thoughts, it also generates true thoughts at the wrong time, in the wrong volume, with the wrong urgency. For example, I made a mistake may be true, but turning that into I am doomed is not a fact. It is a leap, and once the brain starts leaping, it often keeps leaping farther than the original problem requires. That is why interruption matters. Interruption can be tiny: change posture, move location, write one sentence, speak one sentence, or do one small task. The point is not to become instantly calm. The point is to stop the loop from having total control of the next moment. And that is a realistic goal, because healing is often not one big breakthrough. It is repeated moments of non-escalation, repeated moments of noticing, repeated moments of not following the thought all the way down. So if your mind is loud today, do not demand silence, demand distance. Demand one concrete action. Demand one small return to the present. That is enough to start. And if the rumination is affecting sleep, work, relationships, or daily functioning for a long time, that is a sign to get real support. You do not need to solve a serious mental pattern by force, alone, in silence. The final takeaway is simple. Thoughts are events, not orders. Repetition is not truth. Urgency is not wisdom. And a smaller step is often the most powerful step available. Start there.